What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday. It is Friday night as I record this, so if it comes out on Saturday, it's not our fault. It's still Form Check Friday. Deal with it. Anyways, what we do on this series is we take viewer submitted videos that have been emailed in by you wonderful watchers of our content out there, and we put them up on the screen behind me. We try to pick them apart and help you all become better lifters, become more efficient, and a little bit more conscious of technique and some of the modifications we can make to technique to try to progress more, better, whatever you're gonna call it there. All right, so we're gonna pop up our last submission from last episode of Form Check Friday. This is Nishant, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but he was doing a 1 rep max on his deadlift here, and he wanted to make sure that his form was decent enough for it to be a good lift for competitions or in general in terms of his mechanics. So pretty strong, definitely a round back deadlifter. So one thing that I would probably try is, see if we can get into a neutral back position. If not, again, everybody who tunes into our live streams knows flexion is not necessarily a mechanic for injury. Rounding your back will not make you blow your back out. It will not hurt you any more than lifting with a straight back. Those are common misunderstandings. Anyways, what I think we should do is try to widen this stance a little bit, get those knees a little bit further apart, and I think that'll allow us to get a little bit more extension through that back. Now, the reason I recommend that is because we may be able to be more efficient with a flatter back, but as far as competition goes, this would definitely pass. There's no rule against having a rounded back. In fact, a lot of the strongest deadlifters have a little bit of a rounded back, and if you see, we definitely do see sort of a pretty neutral position in his low back, and the rounding's all happening here, which is pretty common in high-level powerlifters. So the one thing I would try is widen your stance, try to push your knees out a little bit and see if you can get into a better, more sort of flat-backed position. The other thing I would say is try some sumo deadlifts if you haven't, and see if perhaps you're a little bit better suited to those. If not, continue to progress here because, like I said, this is definitely a competition white-lighted lift. All right, we're gonna move on to our next video here. This one comes from Martin, and Martin is doing some squats here. So Martin, he says he's a big fan of the channel. He says he's studied it like a hawk. All right, binging through almost all our content. Following the 16-week program, he said he's seen some really good progress. Put 30 kilos on his bench, 60 kilos on his squat, and 70 kilos on his deadlift. Wow. That is pretty substantial. Good for you. He says he's 6 feet tall, 100 kilos, and started going to the gym around this July. So he's always been told he's very powerful from prior sports. Reason he's changed to a high bar is because he's having fun learning the Olympic weightlifting movements, and was wondering what I think of his high bar squat. He says it actually feels a little bit more comfortable than the low bar, and loves the amount of depth he can get. Now this video clip is really in and out of focus here. But we're gonna do the best we can. All right, there we go. It's focused for a quick second. This is the problem with autofocus when there's a bunch of people in the background, but no worries, man, no worries. Let's take a look at this. So it's not the greatest angle because we can't really see what's going on up here, up this way, in terms of where his bar is and etc. Now it looks to me like you're getting pretty loose in the bottom there. So if we watch, here is good. Everything to about here is really good. And then we'll see the hips kind of dump in and under. The knees roll forward. The upper back relaxes a little bit. So we can see right here, we kind of really settle in and loosen up into that position. What I would like to see is for you to continue to hold tension in the glutes, continue to keep those knees back a little bit, continue to keep pressure in the upper back, even and especially during pauses in lifts. And you can see how much you had to kind of come out of that position to get that bar moving again. So as you come up, the knees come back a little bit. We have to retighten the back in order to get through the rest of the rep. Now I'm assuming we have another rep here. Again, pretty in and out of focus. Same thing, very much like lose the back position we started with. Now this isn't a bad back position, but what happened was we were a little more like this, and now we're a little more like this. So we're getting this shifting back and forth which causes a loss of tension in the trunk and a loss of sort of translation of force from the legs into the bar when we loosen through the midsection. So I would prefer to see more tightness in here, more tightness in the upper back, keeping the hips and the knees back a little bit to help create and maintain that tension. You can see in this rep, as we come up, that bar actually starts pulling you forward because we're not tight in the upper back. Is there one more rep here? And that was actually probably the best of the three. You maintained the best tension in that one. So I think that's the big thing, is working to maintain better tension in the bottom. I know the high bar, generally you're going to have a pretty sort of almost exaggerated range of motion, especially when you're going to like a dead stop pause in the bottom. But I do want you to be conscious of maintaining tension. Don't let yourself get loose just because you're pausing. All right, our next video comes from Otto, and I hope you guys like the festive background. We're hoping everybody has a great holidays, spend some time with their family, stay safe out there, don't drink and drive. All right, so Otto says he's been binge watching Form Check videos, decided to give it a shot. Lately he's been considering doing a powerlifting meet, mainly to have some fun on the platform. Great, that's a great place to start from. Nothing too serious, just get a feel of how it is. Who knows, maybe it's my true calling. Anyways, bench has been struggling and he's not sure why. Here's 6 at 9 with 97.5 kilos. All right, let's dig in. So really nice comp setup. You can see he's got the Alico rack, looks like Alico bar, Alico plates. So that's, I mean, that's really fantastic to be able to use that grade of equipment, especially when just starting. So one thing I'm seeing here is first off, we're touch and going reps, which if the intent isn't to touch and go reps, it's just to train the bench press, especially if you're looking into competing at some point, do more paused work. Spend more time with that bar on your chest in a tight position. Get used to where the bar touches. Get used to creating tension to the bottom and pushing from a dead stop off the chest. Those are going to be really big beneficial things to be doing if you're looking at getting into powerlifting. The next thing I'm seeing here is we are getting a little bit loose on the bottom. So we come down through to about this part of the range of motion. And from about here to the chest, we're kind of dropping a little bit. We're getting this body movement and this little bit of a dip and this lapse of leg drive where we're kind of like loosening on the way down and then pushing again on the way up. What I usually coach people to do is keep this going, man. Keep that leg drive on the whole time. Keep that chest up hard into the bar. Squeeze the upper back nice and tight. Don't let that lapse as you come to the chest. As you come to the chest, that should be some of the tightest parts of the movement in terms of what your upper back is doing. We want to be squeezing those shoulder blades together, helping to drive that chest up, using the legs to push up into that the whole time. Now that being said, you got a pretty good bar path on most of these reps. Looks like the bar is coming back and then up in a nice sort of arced or J-curve bar path. But we are just getting loose on the chest. And I think probably the number one thing you can do is try to work to be more consistent with your leg drive, as well as spend more time practicing pausing. Maybe even some long pause variations, doing a 2 count or a 3 count, an exaggerated pause on the chest could be a really good thing, as well as potentially some tempo work, keeping in mind a nice slow controlled movement through the eccentric phase or the downward phase of movement, all the way to the chest, being in more control, making sure that touch is consistent and that we're not touching in different spots on the chest. And I think that will help you. So probably more of a programming standpoint, a couple of cues there, but I think there's some exercise selection moves that you can make to make that progress a little bit quicker. All right, up next, we have Jared. Now, Jared's doing some deadlifts, obviously. He said he's been lifting for just over a year. He said he did his first competition in September and everything was going great until the deadlift. He got red lighted on his second and third attempts for soft knees. He's been trying to fix that. He's moved his stance in a bit and has his feet facing forward more. So I can already see it here. And it still looks like you're loosening in the knees as you go through the lockout. So as you go through the lockout, you're just not keeping your quads flexed. I want you to really squeeze your quads, keep that weight back on your heels, and don't push your knees in under the bar. You don't need to lean back so far at the top. I think that's one thing that people commonly do is they start to lean back. So if we go back a little bit, that's locked out. right there. That's fine. Shoulders are in line with hips, knees are locked, stop there. But what happens is you go through a bunch more range of motion, pulling the upper body back, pushing the hips forward, and the knees have no choice but to unlock when we exaggerate that lockout like that. We could probably be a little further back in general. It looks like we're a little bit over the bar here. So I would work on sort of packing the lats down and back, getting the hips and the knees a little bit further back behind the bar. But the pull itself looks pretty okay. We get to here, and again, you're locked out here. What you're doing is you're going through extra range of motion, and you can see, if everybody watches this knee specifically as we come through, locked out, unlocked. So before you even start lowering the bar, we're pretty soft in that knee. So that's where that call is coming from. And I would definitely agree with the call. On this rep, I don't even think you locked the knees. Where was it? That one, yeah. So this rep, everything stays forward. It looked like you kind of skipped the knee lock. So what I would advise is as you go through the movement, lock the knees first, then push the hips through just enough that the knees don't unlock. Don't unlock those knees. Exaggerate that knee lock, exaggerate the quad contribution to the lockout. Yeah, every rep you're unlocking your knees at the top. That rep you're going through a good lockout and then you're unlocking is the issue. It's just an exaggeration of the lockout that isn't necessary, and I think that's what cost you those lights. I apologize that that happened. It's unfortunate, but I definitely think that it's going to be a pretty easy fix for you, my man. All right, Felix is going to be the last one that we critique today, and then we're going to bring Jesse up to play for the crowd. All right, so Felix is doing some squats now. He says he's watched us for a while here. Submitted a video of his squats, which is one of his stronger lifts, but he's got a problem in the bottom position. Now, he doesn't say specifically what that is, but he says he's going to compete in the beginning of next year at the 59 kilo class. So fairly light lifter. I would think the problem with the bottom position might be depth. That rep's high for sure. So, I mean, we're looking at the level of the top of the knee, right about here, and the hip crease is above it. And even if we're being generous and taking this as the top of the knee instead of this, it looks like you're squatting high. So we probably need to play with stance width, maybe going wider, maybe toeing out, maybe toeing in, maybe going narrower. But in any case, that's I think probably the lowest squat of the set. And if we try to dig through the clothes here, we've got hip crease there, top of the knee there, so we're still high. At the very best, we're probably at parallel. So that's the biggest issue right there, is you need to just continue moving downward for longer in the squat. This rep again, it's like you're putting on the brakes too early instead of letting yourself get to a naturally full range of motion and using that sort of stretch reflex, that little bit of a rebound out of the bottom, which can be pretty useful sometimes. So really good squat to that point though. We just need to get those hips lower. So I would keep the knees exactly where they are. Try not to have them come back any further, right? Try not to let them come forward any further. We don't want the knees to swing forward and the hips to swing down like this. What we want is for the knees to stay exactly as they are and for the hips to drop straight down. So keep pushing backwards into the hole. Keep that weight balanced on the feet. And I think you'll be in a good spot. Squat mechanically looks good, but yeah, you're a little high. So we just need to squat a little bit deeper. All right, next up we have Jesse. And I'm gonna read the context that came with Jesse's email here, and we'll go from there. All right, so Jesse says, thanks for doing these. A little bit about him. He's been strength training for about 15 months. Originally just wanted to get jacked. Quickly found more enjoyment in the pursuit of strength. All right, powerlifting. As he's writing this email, he's 5 weeks out from his first powerlifting meet. He'll be competing at 198 in the USPA. His current 1RMs are 375, 205, 465, and that's gonna be in pounds. I'm pretty strong when it comes to the squat and deadlift, but bench has been an absolute grind for me. I've been running Greg Knuckles' 3 times intermediate bench program since September, trying to drive up my bench in preparation for the meet. It's been going well and has helped me quite a bit. Oops, we're switching back and forth between videos there. So without further ado, here's his bench, 160 for 5. He says he's hit 205 multiple times at RPE 9, but failed 215 last week, and it wasn't even close. So this should be around 80%. So what I want everybody to do is go ahead and head into the comments section below. Let us know what you see in Jesse's bench. What do you think that Jesse could work on? Are there any cues, perhaps some programming considerations, or anything like that that you see that we could help Jesse increase his bench or improve his bench by being conscious of, being aware of? And what we'll do is I will come back next week and we'll start with Jesse, and I will give my critique on his lifting, and that way we can have a great discussion, and hopefully Jesse will read the comments, be able to get some good ideas of some things to try, and hopefully that'll help him. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're interested in having your lifts featured on Form Check Friday, go ahead and head over to, or sorry, rather send your email to formcheckfriday@gmail.com. That is formcheckfriday@gmail.com. As well, if you head over to twitch.tv/Calgary Barbell, we do live stream form checks. So if anybody's interested in that, we generally check a lot of the people who are watching, and it's kind of a cool little live interaction. So head over there and you can get a bead on when our next live stream will be. And that will be it for today. So thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.